Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. In this one I'm gonna do a pretty off the cuff video. I wasn't really planning on talking about this, but it came up and I realized that uh, I think a lot of people misunderstand battery degradation. So I get a lot of questions about how much battery degradation I expect, and I it seems like framed in that is, well, what happens when you have to replace the battery? Well, battery degradation is not synonymous with replacing the battery. When I went into buying the Bolt EV, I expected to get, based on EPA ratings, right, a 220 to 230 mile car. That's sort of what I expected. Well, it turns out that for whatever reason, the Bolt EV exceeds those expectations by a fairly large margin. And in my local driving, I see typically 250 to 260 miles per charge. Now, when I go on my road trips, higher speeds, constant freeway draw, uh, that range drops down to about 200 to 220 miles, depending on conditions. So the way battery degradation works, though, is a slow loss of capacity. And, we have Teslas right now that have 200, 300, 400,000 miles, and they're barely into double digit battery degradation, right? And the Volt isn't as good of an example because the way GM set up the battery, there's a big buffer on either side. So you really only use a small portion of the battery, which preserves battery life. But if you do look at the Volt, there's very little battery degradation on a lot of these cars that are reaching close to 8 years old now. So as far as we can predict, the battery degradation on the Bolt EV is going to be very small and it's going to be very incremental. As far as what I expect, based on my experiences so far, I would be surprised to see the battery degrade by more than 10% uh, in the next 150 to 250,000 miles. So basically, it by the time this car hits 300,000 miles, if it has 10% battery degradation, that will be in line with my expectations. But again, that's 10% degradation off of a car that's already exceeding its expectations. And even if it weren't right, I kind of went into it expecting that. If I lose 10% of my range, 10% of my battery capacity, around town, I'm still getting 225 to 230 miles. On my highway trips, I'm still getting 180 to 190 miles per charge. So, really, what it is it's less capable as a result of the battery degradation, but it's still a competent, capable car. And I think that's the key piece that people misunderstand, right? So if I lose 30% capacity within the warranty period, well, it's covered under warranty. But the things that would cause a catastrophic battery failure that would require the entire battery to be replaced on my dime, right? You're talking about possibly $15,000, including labor. Well, those are those are typically catastrophic events that, if it's not covered under warranty, it would be covered under insurance, whether it's flood damage, accident, whatever, right? So again, it's not exactly something that I'm likely to have to replace. So if you don't have a battery failure due to some sort of a faulty build or faulty cell, if you don't have that in the first few thousand miles, the likelihood that you have it even after 100 or 200 or 300,000 miles is very, very low. So the thing is, really, you can't think about a battery like certain components in an internal combustion engine vehicle, say a transmission. There's no incrementalism in that transmission. If it fails, it fails, right? If it's performing, it's performing. Same thing with other components within an internal combustion vehicle. Now, I would say though that the battery might actually be most similar to the engine in an internal combustion engine vehicle. Uh, and people don't think about this, but 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 miles into your ownership of a fossil car, it's likely not seeing the power it was when you first drove it off the lot. It's likely not seeing the fuel efficiency it was seeing when you first drove it off the lot. It probably has a 5 to 10 to 15 to 20% loss in all of those areas compared to when it was new, right? That's wear, and that's just over time, it's literally blowing itself apart. But over time, you're going to lose that performance. I don't hear people with internal combustion engine vehicles saying, look, my car, 100,000 miles, I'm down 10 horsepower off of the 150 horsepower I started with. It's time to replace the engine. You don't hear that, right? And so why would you think that about a battery? If I lose 10% of the capacity in the Bolt EV battery, the car is still better than anything at its price point on the market right now. So what have I lost, right? And if it eventually comes to the point of having to replace my battery, I expect that to be, even with the amount of miles I drive, very, very far down into the future, right? So, I'm not really worried about having to replace the battery, and I think we really need to make sure that people change the way they look at battery degradation. It's a slow loss in performance over time, but the truth of the matter is, most people aren't even going to notice it. Half the time, or more than that, I'm in Hilltop Reserve mode already, which is already like giving myself 10% battery degradation, and I'm fine. I take it off for long trips because it makes it a little bit more convenient, but for the most part, I could leave it on and it would have a very, very small impact on how my trips go. So if the battery degraded by the same amount that Hilltop Reserve mode is setting aside in, capacity, the impact to me in my life would be very, very minimal. So for the next 200, 300,000 miles, I'm not expecting to suffer any sort of consequences at all based on any form of battery degradation. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. I think we need to sort of make sure people understand the way batteries work, and it's not quite as gloomy and doomy as I think some people uh, make it out to be. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It helps out the channel. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And as always, thank you for watching.